Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You are welcome to yet again another episode of the Green Series. As we promise to make you fall in love with Nigeria again, we will continue with these programs until we know that all of us are patriotic Nigerians. Well, this is our own efforts to contribute to our nation's development. This week we'll be talking about Nigeria's government, its structure, and its functions. It is just an overview, it is just a highlight, so you might find some errors to it as I'm not a political science graduate. So let me take you through the program with my colleague Abubakar Haruna Muhammad. He will be helping me to discuss this topic with you. The system runs on a federal system of government, which means we have the federal government and the state government. Nigeria's government is a democratic government, which means, which we all know as the system, the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Essentially, public office holders are just public servants who are elected by the people to go and serve the people. At independence, Nigeria runs on the parliamentary system of government, the same one which is being used in Britain, the same one which is used in India, which means they have a prime minister and then a ceremonial president together with some parliamentarians. But after a series of coups, we now have the presidential system, which means we have a president and then state governors. In this regard, the president is both the head of state and the head of government. Now we have three arms of government, which are the executive, the judicial, and the parliament, which they all work hand in hand to make sure the system of government runs smoothly, to increase the efficiency of service delivery, and then other things to build on rules and regulation and so on and so forth. Now, the 1999 Constitution gave powers to all these arms of government. They all have their distinct powers, they all have their distinct responsibilities and roles. We also, the country also have two tiers of government, the state government and then the local government. The state government is run or headed by the state governor, while the local government is run or headed by the local government chairman. We have about 360 members of the National House of Assembly, 109 senators, and over 100 or 200 members of the State House of Assembly. We also have 37 executives, 36 governors for each state, and then the president is also an executive. The executive is perhaps the most popular arm of government, but then we have other arms of government or other public office holders that are close to us. But let Abubakar take us through the role of government. What is the government expected to do?
Okay, thank you, Muhammad, for having me. You know, when we talk about the role of government, it is important we start by discussing what is government entirely. There is this debate over time by political scientists and social commentators about the question is about, is government even really necessary? Because there is always this continuous cry about failure of government, this government has failed in doing this and that. So basically, government is an institution that performs the political actions of the state. And when I said political, in this regard, I'm not talking about politics in the sense of this popular campaign, politicians going here and there campaigning for vote and so forth. When we talk about politics, I'm talking about it in a scientific form. We said politics is the authoritative allocation of values. So all what government does is to implement this role of politics. And what are these values? When we say values, we talk about things that add value to the human life. Like good roads, good water supply, security of life and property. This is the basic responsibility of government. That is why the definition says the authoritative allocations of value. These allocations are allocated to people based on their needs, perhaps, and using what? Authoritative powers. That is the definition of politics. So all the activities of government is centered upon this particular issue, the allocation of values through the use of what? Political authority. So when we talk about government, the roles of government, it is like I mentioned earlier, this debate about is government really necessary? Well, we can simply say that if government is able to provide these basic roles, that is the allocation of values, then it has succeeded as a government. But if it has not, then I think it is safe to say that this government is a failed state, is a failed government or a failed state if it has failed in doing that basic responsibilities. And to talk about the role of, you talk about Nigeria operating a federal system of government with powers delegated to the three arms of the government. You see, we have the executive, like you mentioned, the legislature, and the judiciary. First role, I think, belongs to the legislators because they are in charge of creating laws, formulating laws, and these laws will be left for the executive to finally decide on which one to implement or not. And if the executive pronounce these laws, implement these laws, it is left for the judiciary to interpret it in the form of laws, act, and so forth, or in a court case or hearing and so forth. So they all have their independent roles, but they overlap each other all the time because, and I think one cannot work without the other. That is why, for instance, you see all policies of the executive implemented by the executive must come through legislative process, except for emergency situations like a threat to national security and so forth. All laws or policies must come through the legislation. And this is partly because, especially in the form of Nigeria, because we are practicing a democratic system of government. You know, we say democracy is the government of the people, for the people and by the people and so forth. So all this goes around the people. When we say, okay, the president has introduced a new policy or a law, and people will sometimes, out of ignorance, begin to complain that, okay, this thing will harm us, this thing and that. But it is the outcome of legislation of all these National Assembly members, who by indirectly are representing people, or let's say even directly, because these people elect them into the offices, so they are representing them. Every law or policy of the government that they discuss, formulate, and so forth is indirectly the laws of the people. So when the government establish a new laws that maybe it does not favor the masses, let them always know that this is the outcome of their laws. They are the ones that formulate this indirectly through their legislation. So if you want to complain, I think people should begin to understand that if government has some laws that is not suitable for their liking, they should first blame their representative, because they are their voices, they are the one talking on their behalf, not straight to the executive. Although the executive is the final output, and then the judiciary also appears. Well, these are the basic rule of, I think, a government, and yes, that's it for this.
Okay. So in addition to all this that you have said, thank you very much for helping me host this program. Government is essentially a big body that has a division of responsibility. People think the president is the only one in charge, is the only person the executive can bring about all change. But essentially, they should know that this thing is shared responsibility. So thank you very much. We will discuss in the next program the role and responsibility of each of the arm of government. We will discuss the role and responsibility of the executive, the judiciary, and then the parliament. Thank you very much for joining this program. So thank you very much for joining this program. Kindly do subscribe to the Green series, the Green Mind Drive on YouTube, and then we will take you more on Nigeria. Thank you once again.